Detective Marcus Langley had spent his entire career chasing shadows, piecing together the fragments of crimes that others couldn't solve. His reputation was built on an almost supernatural ability to see what others missed. The misplaced fingerprint, the inconsistent alibi, the faintest trace of blood where there shouldn't have been any. But on the night of November 14th, the hunter became the hunted. The call came in just after midnight. A neighbor had heard a single gunshot from Langley's two-story brownstone and, after getting no response at the door, called the police. Patrol officers arrived to find the front door unlocked. Odd for a man as cautious as Langley. And inside, the house was eerily still. The only light came from a study on the second floor, casting a dim glow down the staircase. Upstairs, they found him. Marcus Langley was slumped forward over his oak desk, his right hand loosely gripping his service revolver. A single bullet hole punctured the back of his skull, the blood pooling beneath his head. Staining case files and photographs spread across the desk. At first glance, it looked like suicide. A typed note sat beside him, its message vague but resigned. "I can't keep fighting. Forgive me." But the responding officers hesitated. Something wasn't right. Detective Langley was left-handed. Every colleague knew it. He signed reports, drank coffee, even fired his weapon with his left hand. Yet the gun was in his right. The angle of the wound was wrong, too. A self-inflicted shot would have left soot and stippling around the entry. But the wound was too clean, too precise. And then there was the note. Marcus was meticulous, old school. If he had written a suicide note, it would have been in his own handwriting, not typed. The lead investigator, a detective named Harlan Briggs, was ready to call it a suicide and close the case. But Officer Elena Vasquez, Langley's former protégé, refused to accept it. She had worked alongside him for 5 years, learning from the best. She knew Marcus had been digging into something big, something dangerous. The week before his death, he had told her, "If anything happens to me, don't trust the obvious." Elena walked through the study, her eyes scanning for anything out of place. The desk drawers were slightly ajar, as if someone had rifled through them. A framed photo of Marcus and his late wife was face down, unlike him. And then she saw it. Beneath the desk, nearly hidden by the chair leg, was a small, crumpled slip of paper. She unfolded it carefully. A single word was scrawled in Marcus's handwriting. Blackthorn. Elena's blood ran cold. She had heard that name before, whispered in the precinct, referenced in old case files. A shadowy network with ties to organized crime, corrupt politicians, and even law enforcement. Marcus had been chasing them, and now he was dead. She pocketed the note before Briggs could see it. If Marcus had been murdered, the killer was still out there. And if they were powerful enough to make it look like suicide, they were powerful enough to silence anyone who asked too many questions. Elena left the house that night with one certainty. Marcus Langley didn't kill himself, and she was going to prove it. The police report officially listed Marcus Langley's death as a suicide, but Elena Vasquez couldn't shake the feeling that every detail was wrong. The department had already begun clearing out his desk at the precinct, boxing up case files like he had never existed. But Marcus wasn't the kind of man who left loose ends. If he had known he was in danger, he would have left a trail. She just had to find it. 3 nights after the funeral, Elena returned to Marcus's brownstone under the cover of darkness. The forensic team had already processed the scene, but they had been looking for evidence of suicide, not murder. She started in the study, running her fingers along the bookshelves, checking behind framed awards, searching for anything out of place. Nothing. Then she moved to the bedroom, the last place Marcus would have been before his death. The room was immaculate, bed made, clothes hung neatly in the closet. Too neat. Marcus had lived alone since his wife's passing, and while he was organized, he wasn't obsessive. She knelt beside the bed, her flashlight beam sweeping across the hardwood floor. Near the nightstand, one of the floorboards looked slightly uneven, the wood around it faintly scuffed. She pressed down on the edge. It shifted. Her pulse quickened as she pried it up. Beneath it lay a small, dust-covered metal box, its surface dull under the beam of her flashlight. The lock was sturdy, but the keyhole was worn, This box had been opened many times before. She reached in her pocket and pulled out the key she had found taped to the back of Marcus's desk drawer earlier that day. It slid in smoothly. Inside the box were files, dozens of them, each labeled with a case number and a name. She recognized some of them. Cold cases, unsolved murders, suspicious accidents. All of them had been ruled suicides or dead-end investigations. But Marcus had kept them separate, hidden. She flipped through the pages, her breath catching as she noticed the pattern. Each victim had been investigating something big before they died. A drug ring, a police corruption scandal, a string of suspicious warehouse fires. And in the margins of every file, Marcus had scribbled the same word, Blackthorn. At the bottom of the box was a single file, thicker than the others. This one had no case number. Instead, it bore a single handwritten label, Me. Elena's hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a collection of notes, surveillance photos, and a list of names, some of them cops, others politicians, all circled and connected by arrows. At the top of the page, Marcus had written, "If you're reading this, they got to me. Don't trust anyone, especially not the ones who smile the most." Beneath the papers lay a folded city map, its edges marked with red X's, coordinates. And tucked into the crease was a small, unmarked key. Elena's mind raced. Marcus hadn't just been investigating Blackthorn. He had been building a case against them. And now, whoever had killed him thought the evidence died with him. But they were wrong. She closed the box and slipped into her bag. The key in her hand felt heavy with promise. Whatever Marcus had left behind, it was meant for her to find. And she wouldn't stop until she uncovered the truth, no matter who stood in her way. The coordinates in Marcus's files led Elena to an industrial park on the city's outskirts, where rows of identical storage units stood under flickering sodium lights. Unit 217 was tucked in the farthest corner, its lock rusted but intact. The key from Marcus's box slid in with a gritty resistance before turning with a satisfying click. The roll-up door groaned in protest as she lifted it just enough to slip inside. Dust swirled in the beam of her flashlight, revealing a space no larger than a prison cell. No furniture, no boxes, just a single banker's box sitting in the center of the concrete floor. A sticky note on the lid read in Marcus's precise handwriting, "Burn after reading." The box contained 3 items: a leather-bound journal, a digital voice recorder, and a manila envelope thick with documents. Elena pressed play on the recorder first. Static hissed before Marcus's voice filled the cramped space, low and urgent. "Vasquez, if you're hearing this, they've made their move. I've been careful, but Blackthorn has eyes everywhere, even in the precinct. Captain Reeves has been asking too many questions about my cases. He's dirty. I found the transfer records. Payments from shell companies linked to Blackthorn's front operations." A pause, then a weary sigh. "I should have seen it sooner. Reeves was the one who assigned me all those dead-end cases, the ones that kept leading me in circles." The journal filled in the gaps. Page after page of Marcus's meticulous notes detailed his years-long investigation into Blackthorn's operations, drug trafficking, money laundering, even whispers of assassinations disguised as accidents. But the last 10 pages were different. Here, Marcus's usually steady handwriting grew jagged, rushed. He wrote about feeling watched, about his car brakes failing a week before his death, about hang-up calls at 3 a.m. The final entry, dated the day he died, contained only 2 lines. "Reeves knows I'm close. Tonight, I plant the evidence. God help whoever finds this." The manila envelope held surveillance photos, grainy but unmistakable. Captain Reeves meeting with known Blackthorn enforcers in alleyways, parking garages, once even outside the precinct. But the most damning photo showed Reeves accepting a briefcase from a figure whose face was obscured, the timestamp reading the day before Marcus's death. Paperclipped to it was a receipt from a private ballistics lab confirming the bullet that killed Marcus match test rounds fired from Reeves's backup pistol, a fact never disclosed in the official report. Elena's hands shook as she repacked the box. The recorder had one final message. "The watch, Elena. Check the watch." She remembered it now. The vintage Hamilton timepiece Marcus wore every day, the one that had been logged into evidence with his other personal effects. It wasn't just a watch. It was his final insurance policy. As she slid the storage unit door shut, Elena realized Marcus hadn't just left her clues. He'd laid an intricate trap, and Captain Reeves had already walked right into it. The only question was whether she could prove it before Blackthorn's long shadow swallowed her too. The evidence locker was quieter than usual when Elena arrived just before shift change. She flashed her badge at the duty officer, a rookie named Daniels who barely glanced up from his phone, and signed the logbook with steady hands. Her throat tightened as she scrawled the case number for Marcus Langley's personal effects. The watch. It had to be there. Daniels disappeared into the maze of steel shelving and returned with a sealed evidence bag. Through the clear plastic, Marcus's Hamilton watch gleamed dully under the fluorescent lights, its leather band still bearing the faint imprint of his wrist. Elena's fingers twitched as she signed the release form. One wrong move now would tip off the wrong people. Back in her car, she locked the doors before tearing open the evidence bag. The watch was heavier than she remembered, its glass face scratched from years of wear. She turned it over, examining the back casing. No visible seams, no screws, just smooth metal. Then she noticed it, a nearly invisible hairline gap near the crown. Her keys worked as makeshift prying tools. After a few tense seconds, the backplate popped off with a soft click. Nestled inside the compartment wasn't a micro SD card as she'd expected, but something far more damning, a wafer-thin data chip embedded in a transparent sleeve, the kind used in wiretaps. And beneath it, folded to the size of a postage stamp, was a single slip of thermal paper. The chip required a specialized reader, but the thermal slip unfolded to reveal a string of numbers, a bank account, and 2 words, Safety Deposit Box 1142. Elena recognized the bank immediately. First National Trust was where the department held seized evidence in high-profile cases. Where Reeves had access, she drove straight to the tech division, bypassing the front desk to find Raj Patel, the only forensic analyst she trusted. Without a word, she slid the data chip across his desk. Raj's eyebrows shot up when he recognized the encryption pattern. "This is department-issue surveillance gear," he muttered, plugging it into an isolated terminal. The kind only supervisors get. The footage that loaded made Elena's blood turn to ice. Time-stamped the night of Marcus's death. It showed Reeves entering the brownstone study with a key, moving directly to the desk as if he knew exactly where to look. The camera angle was low, hidden in the bookshelf, Elena realized. Reeves's gloved hands rifled through files before he turned abruptly, drew his backup pistol, and fired a single, executioner shot into Marcus's skull the moment the detective walked in. Then the careful staging began, positioning the gun, planting the fake suicide note, even adjusting Marcus's sleeve to hide the fact he was left-handed. But Reeves had missed one detail. As he turned to leave, his jacket swung open, revealing the inside pocket and the Blackthorn insignia pin gleaming on its lining. Raj ejected the chip with shaking hands. This is a career ender. For him, for anyone who touches it. Elena pocketed both pieces of evidence. She knew what she had to do next. First National Trust didn't open until 9 a.m. That gave her 12 hours to disappear, and to make sure Marcus's final proof stayed safe until she could expose the truth. The rain hammered against the bank's marble steps as Elena waited for First National Trust to open, her damp collar clinging to her neck. She'd spent the night in a motel under a fake name, jumping at every car that passed. The data chip burned in her pocket. If Reeves discovered what she'd taken, she'd be next on Blackthorn's list. At 8:58 a.m., a manager unlocked the doors. Elena forced herself to walk slowly to the safety deposit counter, her badge conspicuously displayed. "Box 1142, she said, sliding the thermal slip across the polished wood. The manager's keys jingled as he led her to the vault. The box was larger than expected, the kind used for document storage. When the dual locks disengaged, Elena's breath caught. Inside lay a sealed evidence bag containing Marcus's department-issued revolver, the one supposedly used in his suicide. A ballistics report clipped to it confirmed the gun hadn't been fired in years. Next to it sat a notarized affidavit dated 2 days before Marcus's death. If I am found dead by gunshot, Captain Daniel Reeves is my murderer. But the real weapon was beneath these items. A black ledger detailing 20 years of Blackthorn's operations. Payments, names, dates. Reeves appeared on nearly every page. Elena's fingers trembled as she photographed each page with her burner phone. Then she did what Marcus couldn't. She walked straight to the FBI field office. It took 3 weeks for the dominoes to fall. Reeves was arrested at his daughter's soccer game, the Blackthorn pin still fastened to his suit lining. The subsequent raids netted 2 judges, a state senator, and 7 police officers, all on Marcus's list. At the press conference, the district attorney praised Elena's bravery. She didn't smile. Standing at Marcus's grave afterward, she finally understood why he'd chosen the storage unit, the bank, the watch, each piece designed to force Reeves into the open. The revolver in the deposit box proved the suicide was staged. The ledger gave prosecutors everything they needed. And the footage? That was for her, to make sure she never doubted. She placed the Hamilton watch on his headstone, its gears finally still. The last piece of the puzzle back where it belonged. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell tolled. The sound carried through the cemetery like an echo of justice. Loud, clear, and long overdue. The department offered her Marcus's old office. She declined. There were other shadows to chase, other truths buried where no one dared look. But this time, she'd be ready. After all, Marcus had taught her well.